Hold on a sec. How are the? What do you mean? How are the quizzes?
Like, how do people use limits?
Oh, the average is probably someplace in the low 80s. Someplace in there. All right, so let's move on. Data tables are nice when you want to look at a range of things like that and get some idea of, the possibilities of what could happen given, you get good grades or bad grades or whatever. Loan rates go up and down, that sort of stuff. There's another tool called GoalSeek that'll actually solve problems for you. And so instead of saying, I need to reach this goal, and it'll figure out how to do that. So here I've got, in my example, a very, very simple profit loss sheet. We're producing some sort of widget, and we've got how many units were sold and what price we're selling them at. So that's up here's my income part. And down here are the various expenses that go into this. Some fixed cost. Labor is figured out on a per unit basis. It costs, like $3 to produce each one of these widgets, so on and so forth. And materials, a certain amount of materials go into each one. What's the per unit cost of that, and stuff like that, right? And then you just take your income minus your expenses, and that gives you your gross profit. Okay. All right, so we've got this thing set up here. And currently, or this last year, we produced 15,000 of these things, and we ended up making $36,000, right? And so, corporate headquarters comes down and says, you have to make $50,000 on this unit next year, or you're fired. Okay? You've been set. Your goal is to make $50,000, or you're gonna, your career's in trouble. Happens all the time. So you start thinking about this. Okay, well, to do that, how many units do I have to produce? So you start thinking about that, and so you come over here and you say, well, here's 20,000. That's more than enough. So if I'm trying to figure out, what's my threshold that I need to make sure I keep my job, so then you say, well, if 15 was too low and 20 was too high, it's got to be inside. So you can pick something like 17.5, have it again, and I'm a little bit low, right? And you can keep playing this guessing game until you got it right. You keep going, it's low, high, you pick the half, and then you go. Eventually, you'll narrow, the search will narrow in onto what you need. Well, that could take you 20, 30 minutes doing it this way, or if you get lucky on a guess, it might take you a couple of seconds. GoalSeek will solve this problem for us automatically. Now, GoalSeek wants to change numbers in the model and stuff, so when I do this, I always just keep a copy of the model around so I can come back to it and compare it and do whatever I want to do with it. So I'm just going to copy this over to the next column. Like that. Okay. So again, you set up your model, and now we're done. You copy it and get ready to go do this. So Data tab, What If Analysis, and this time pick GoalSeek. Okay. Set cell, the goal cell. Well, it's this cell down here, the gross profit cell. And then you tell it what value you want it to be, what's the solution you're looking for. I want that cell to equal 50,000, no commas. Okay. And then the next argument here is by changing what cell. Well, that's what units sold, because I'm trying to mimic just what I did here, my little demo a second ago. So I would just pick that cell. And it's going to pick different values in there, and it's going to check to see what the gross profit is, and when it hits $50,000, it's going to stop. Okay. And it's done. Okay. That's how quick it does that. And it does exactly the same thing that I just showed you in my slow example. It picks a number, it sees if it's high or low, and then adjusts the range, and it picks a number in the middle of the range and stuff like that. It doesn't use algebra, it doesn't use calculus, doesn't use any fancy math. It just uses a very simple guessing routine. Okay. But there's the answer. So to keep my job for next year, I've got to sell at least 18,374 units. Okay. All right. Now then, suppose, my boss's boss gets greedy and says, we want you to make $100,000. So again, I'm just going to copy this over to the next available column. What happened? There it is, paste. Okay. So then we can go into GoldSeek again and set it up just like we did before. So what if analysis, GoldSeek. Our set cell, again, is the gross profit, and this time we want to make $100,000. And again, the one thing that we have some control over is how many units we're going to sell. So we put that there. And we say, okay. Now it's running, it's trying different things, and it's stopped. Okay. If it does this, and you see it running like this, you should pay particular attention to the answer you get because it may not be right. And obviously it's not right because it only came up with $64,438. Okay. It's guessing. It only gets 100 guesses. You can go in and change that, but that's the default, 100 guesses. And if it can't find the answer in 100 guesses, it stops. So if you see it doing all this sort of stuff, you need to be a little bit careful about the answer you get because it might not be the right answer. Or sometimes you'll get a huge, crazy number, but it just didn't find the right answer. Now, the reason why it stopped at 64,000 is that if in here I've got this hidden column, it turns out that to reach $100,000 we have to produce a certain number of units. But to do that, we have to go into overtime on the production line, and that raises the cost of the thing so that it's more than what we're selling it for, so we can't make $100,000 under these conditions. We have to either find some more cheap labor or find a more efficient way to produce them or whatever. So that's usually what it means when you see it doing that sort of stuff, that you've given it an impossible problem to solve. Okay. But it's still useful because this is not exactly the optimum, but it's pretty close to the optimum. So you can go back to your boss's boss or whoever and say, look, given them the present conditions here with labor costs and material costs and all that sort of stuff, the best we can do is about $64,000 in profit. And that's a good answer. That's a decent answer. All right. So questions about GoldSeek. Okay. So on the next page, you have to simple model here. That's not complete. So you have to finish doing this model. Calculate the monthly payment given those conditions up there. Then use GoldSeek once to figure out how much money you can borrow and have a monthly payment of $650. Then use GoldSeek a second time to figure out how much money you could borrow given those conditions and only pay $500 a month. All right? So go ahead and give that a shot.